My name is David Carter. I'm 28 years old, living in Charleston, South Carolina. I've spent most of my life climbing out of the hole I was born into. I come from a place where dreams feel distant, where you're told from the start that if you want anything more than what you've been given, you'll have to fight for it. And fight I did. I worked harder than most people would ever expect of someone who didn't have the luxury of an inheritance or a safety net to fall back on. I took on multiple jobs throughout college, barely sleeping, running on caffeine and ambition. Some people call it grit, others call it desperation. But to me, it was just the reality of trying to make something of myself when the odds were stacked against me. Growing up, money was always tight. My mom did the best she could, but there were days when I didn't know if we'd have enough for dinner. We moved around a lot, sometimes staying in places that felt like they weren't meant for people like us. But I never let that stop me. I couldn't. I knew that the only way to break free was through education, and that's what kept me going through every sleepless night. But I didn't do it alone. Along the way I met Emma. She's the kind of person you connect with almost instantly when you've both been through the same struggles. She had that same fire in her eyes, that same hunger for something more. I remember the first time we really talked, both of us exhausted from a semester's worth of work, and somehow we found a way to laugh about it. We were in the same boat, but for some reason, it didn't feel as lonely when she was there. We became inseparable, partners in the grind. We'd swap stories about the ridiculous hours we worked, the things we had to sacrifice to keep our heads above water. But through all the hardship, there was always this quiet understanding between us. We both dreamed of escaping, of never having to worry about where the next paycheck was coming from. We dreamed of a life where our past didn't define us. Before I proceed, kindly subscribe and comment where you're watching from. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about thriving. And Emma, with all her ambition and drive, was the person I thought I could trust with my dream. I thought she was my partner, someone who'd be with me every step of the way. Together we could turn this mess of a life into something worth living. Together we'd escape. When I met Emma, it felt like meeting someone who understood the weight of the world I carried. She wasn't just another student in my classes, she was the kind of person who could see beyond the surface, who knew what it meant to fight for every inch of progress. Smart, driven, and more than a little witty, Emma had a way of making everything feel possible, even when it seemed like the odds were stacked against us. At first we were just friends. It started with study sessions, late-night talks about our shared struggles, and the constant exhaustion we both seemed to carry. But soon we became more than just that. She started to feel like my anchor, like the one person who understood what it was like to come from nothing and want something more. When the world felt too heavy, Emma was there, always offering encouragement, always reminding me why it was worth it. As we spent more time together, our conversations shifted from casual discussions about classes to deeper talks about the future. We'd talk about our dreams, how we both wanted to escape the small, limited worlds we'd been born into. Emma's vision of the future wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving. She talked about building something real, something lasting, a life where we could leave the past behind. One evening we sat on the roof of our apartment building, the city sprawled out before us in all its gritty beauty. It was late, the air thick with the humidity that always seemed to hang over Charleston. Emma turned to me, her eyes bright with that same spark I'd seen in her since we'd met. "We'll rise together," she said, her voice steady and full of conviction. "You won't ever have to go back to that life. I promise." And in that moment, I believed her. I believed in us. The weight of all my struggles, all the pain I'd fought through, seemed to disappear. I had Emma by my side, and with her, I felt invincible. That promise, our pact, became the foundation of everything I did from that point on. We were in this together, and together we would build a future that no one could take away. By the time I reached my last year of college, I had an idea. A tech startup, a company that could change everything. The concept wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I worked tirelessly, using every ounce of energy I had to bring it to life. Sleepless nights became the norm. I'd wake up before the sun and work late into the night, drafting business plans, writing code, trying to figure out how to make it all work. Every step forward felt like a victory, and Emma was right there with me, guiding me, pushing me forward when I thought I couldn't go any further. Her support was everything. She helped me refine my pitch, connected me with investors, and even did the little things, like making sure I ate something between my meetings or giving me the space I needed when I hit a wall. Slowly but surely, the company began to gain traction. We got our first round of funding. Then another. And another. I could feel it. The life I dreamed of was no longer a distant fantasy. It was becoming real. With Emma's help, my startup started to grow, and the pieces of my old life, the one I fought so hard to escape, were beginning to fade away. This was it. I was finally breaking free. And with Emma beside me, there was no turning back. It all happened so fast. One minute I was scrambling to make payroll, and the next my company was on the map. We secured a major investment from a top venture capital firm, and suddenly the dream I had been building for years was real. It was surreal, like the world shifted beneath me and suddenly I was standing on solid ground, everything I had worked for in the palm of my hand. The financial freedom that came with that investment, along with the successful launch of our first product, felt like a tidal wave of relief. I was no longer the guy struggling to pay rent or counting pennies for a grocery run. The money came fast. My net worth grew by millions in a matter of months. And with that came the luxury I had only ever dreamed of. I bought a sleek black sports car that screamed success, something I never thought I'd be able to afford. My apartment? A penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city like something out of a movie. I could take vacations to places I once only saw in magazines, staying at 5-star resorts and eating in the finest restaurants. And then there was Emma. When the money started flowing, she was there, right by my side, just as she had promised. But somewhere along the way, I began to notice a shift in her. At first, it was subtle, little things that I brushed off as stress or the pressures of our new life. She'd complain more, ask for more attention, demand more of me in ways I didn't fully understand. She was used to being my support, and now it seemed like the roles were reversing. The late nights I spent working became longer, and I started to feel like I was living for the company, not for myself. There was so much to manage, deals, partners, investors, that I couldn't keep up with everything. And Emma was there to pick up the slack. At first, I was grateful for it. She was managing the social image of our company, controlling our brand's narrative, taking over the public relations side of things, and making sure everything looked polished. It made sense, I thought. She was good at it. But as time passed, her influence over me, and over everything in my life, grew. She started dictating my schedule, telling me who to meet, which events to attend, even how to spend my money. At first, I didn't see it for what it was. I thought it was her wanting to take some of the burden off my shoulders, wanting to help me build this future we dreamed of. I trusted her completely after all. But then came the decisions I wasn't comfortable with, decisions that weren't mine to make. Emma began to handle the finances more aggressively. "We need to expand into these markets," she'd say, pushing me into partnerships that felt risky. "You need to be seen at these events, they'll elevate your profile," she'd argue, as if my presence had become more about building her status than the company's. I trusted her, and that trust slowly turned into blind faith. I didn't question her because, for years, she had been the one person I could rely on. She was my emotional anchor, the person who kept me grounded. But now her presence wasn't just supportive, it was suffocating. The more successful I became, the more Emma seemed to need to control. And with that control came a sense of entitlement, as if she had somehow earned the right to manage everything, including me. I still believed in us, in what we were building together. But as Emma began to push further, make more decisions that didn't sit right with me, a creeping feeling started to grow inside. I didn't know it then, but I was about to learn a painful lesson about what happens when success changes people, and how, in the process, it changes everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. I started noticing the changes in Emma slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. She became more distant. Where once we had shared every little detail of our day, now she seemed to pull away when I tried to talk about anything beyond work. I tried to brush it off as stress from the new life we were building, the pressure of managing my growing empire, balancing the demands of investors, and making sure everything ran smoothly. But something didn't feel right. Her phone became an object of suspicion. It wasn't just that she was always glued to it, it was how she started hiding it. She'd leave the room to take calls, or when I walked by, she'd quickly swipe the screen and lock it. At first, I thought it was paranoia creeping in, the weight of the world causing me to read too much into things. But I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was off. The real turning point came one evening when I got home late from a meeting. The apartment was quiet, unusually so. I walked into the living room and heard Emma's voice, only it wasn't directed at me. She was speaking in low, urgent tones on the phone, but I could make out a few words clearly. "We can make so much money off his success. You won't even know. He's too busy with everything else, and once this deal goes through, we'll be set." My heart stopped in my chest. I froze in the doorway, not wanting to believe what I was hearing, but every word was like a dagger. She was talking to someone who wasn't me. The mention of money and deal was enough to send my mind into overdrive. I didn't know who she was talking to, but I didn't need to hear any more. That night, I lay awake, my thoughts racing. The Emma I knew, the one who had promised we'd rise together, didn't sound like this. There had to be something more going on. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I hired a private investigator. The truth hit harder than I could have ever imagined. The investigator uncovered something I couldn't ignore. Emma had been secretly funneling money from our business into a separate account. Thousands of dollars hidden in plain sight. But that wasn't all. She had been working with one of my competitors, using my name and my influence to negotiate a business deal that would harm my company but line her pockets. She wasn't just taking money from me, she was actively sabotaging me, setting up a deal that could destroy everything I had worked for. The betrayal ran deeper than I ever thought possible. She wasn't just using me for the success she'd claimed to support, she was using me to build her own empire, to climb higher, and to leave me in the dust. Confronting her was the hardest thing I've ever done. I confronted Emma that night, my mind a whirlwind of shock and anger. She was sitting in the living room, the same place we used to spend hours together, talking about our future. This time there was no warmth in the air. Just coldness, the finality of a truth I could no longer deny. "Why, Emma?" I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. "Why would you do this? After everything? After all the promises?" She didn't look surprised. In fact, she almost seemed relieved. She met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw her for what she truly was, calculating, cold, and self-serving. "I never really believed in the relationship like you did," she admitted, her tone matter-of-fact, almost clinical. "You were a means to an end, David. You were my ticket to a better life. You've built this empire, and I helped you get there. I deserve my share now." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "You think you deserve this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "All this time you've been using me." She leaned back, her expression unfazed. "You gave me everything I needed to succeed. You just didn't realize it. You think I didn't help you? That I wasn't there when you needed me? I've worked just as hard as you, and now, it's my turn to benefit from this. We've both been struggling for so long. It's about time I had something of my own." I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But all I could do was sit there, stunned by her lack of remorse, her cold logic. She saw nothing wrong with using me. In her mind, I had owed her this. It was clear now. The woman I loved, the woman who had promised to rise with me, had been playing me from the very beginning. She had used me as a stepping stone to her own success, and when I was no longer useful, she had planned to leave me in the dust. I had been blind. I had trusted her with everything. And now, I had nothing left but the wreckage of everything I thought was real. The betrayal hit me harder than I could have ever prepared for. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. One minute, I was riding high on the success of my company, feeling like I'd made it, and the next, I was drowning in the wreckage of everything I thought I knew. I wasn't just angry. I was crushed, devastated by the realization that the woman I trusted most, my partner, the one person who had been with me through it all, had used me, taken advantage of everything I built, and betrayed me in the most calculated way possible. I felt foolish. All those nights I spent working, all the sacrifices I made, thinking it was for us, only for her to use my success to line her pockets, to destroy everything I had worked so hard for. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let my guard down? I spent days in a fog, barely eating, barely sleeping, just replaying the events in my mind. I couldn't even look at her without feeling this deep ache in my chest. But eventually the anger caught up with the hurt and I knew what I had to do. I had to turn the tables. I wasn't going to let Emma win. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything while I picked up the pieces of my life. I started working quietly behind the scenes, removing her from any connection to my company. I made sure no one knew she had been involved in anything more than a distant role. I didn't need anyone to see her as a partner anymore. But I wasn't just going to erase her from my company. I had bigger plans. I knew about the deal she'd been setting up with my competitor, the one that was supposed to ruin my business, the one that would leave me in shambles while she walked away with a fortune. I wasn't going to let that happen. I used every resource at my disposal to sabotage it. I pulled strings with investors, leaked information that would cause my competitor to pull out, and used my network to ensure that the deal crumbled. I watched from the sidelines as her carefully laid plans fell apart, one piece at a time. Emma had been so sure of herself, so confident that she had everything under control. But now the tide was turning. Slowly I could see the cracks in her empire. The deal collapsed, her reputation began to tarnish, and the people who had once supported her, investors, business partners, started distancing themselves. Meanwhile, my company? We thrived. The press picked up on the news that I had managed to successfully defend my position, and my brand became even more respected in the industry. The success I had worked for wasn't just intact, it was growing. But Emma? She was left with nothing. She lost the trust of everyone who had once believed in her. She lost the money she had so carefully stolen. And worst of all, she lost me. I knew the final confrontation was inevitable. She came to me one evening, looking nothing like the confident woman I had once known. Her eyes were empty, desperate. She was trying to salvage what little she had left. "I'm sorry, David," she said, her voice shaky. "Please, I never meant for it to go this far. I was just trying to..." "Trying to what?" I cut her off, my voice colder than I thought I could ever sound. "Trying to destroy everything I built so you could have it all?" Her face twisted, guilt and regret flooding her features. I didn't think it would end like this. Please, I'll fix this. I'll make it right. Just give me another chance." I shook my head. The pain was gone, replaced by something far stronger, resolve. "No, Emma. You had your chance. And you used it to ruin me." She looked at me like I was a stranger, like the man she had once known didn't exist anymore. I could see her desperation now, the way she was clinging to any hope of saving herself. But it was too late. "I loved you," I said, the words feeling empty now, a hollow echo of what they once meant. "I trusted you with everything. But you used me and I can't forgive that." She reached out, but I pulled away, knowing that no amount of apologies or pleas would ever undo what she had done. She stood there for a moment, defeated, before finally turning and walking away. I watched her go, and as she disappeared, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. I had been broken, but I wasn't anymore. I had rebuilt my life, and I would never allow someone like Emma to take that from me again. The game was over. And I had won. As I sit here now, looking back on everything that's happened, I can't help but reflect on the lessons I've learned. Trust, it's so fragile. It's something you give away freely, something you believe in with all your heart, until the moment it shatters. I spent years building my company, my life, thinking that success was the end game. But I've come to realize that success is nothing if you can't trust the people around you, if the ones closest to you are the ones who can tear it all down in a heartbeat. I've rebuilt my life since then, and I'm stronger now than I ever was before. The pain of the betrayal still lingers, but it doesn't define me. I've learned the hard way to keep my personal and professional lives separate, to guard my heart and my business like the treasures they are. Trust is earned, not freely given, and that's a lesson I'll carry with me forever. Looking back, I know I could never have anticipated the betrayal from someone I loved. But I also know that no matter how high you rise, no matter how much success you achieve, you have to stay vigilant. People change, and the ones you least expect can bring you to your knees. I've learned to be cautious about who I let into my life, and my business. I won't make the same mistake twice. Betrayal can come from the most unexpected places, but so can strength. And now, I trust myself more than anyone else.